Delighted to be here, and I have a fantastic panel. I call it fantastic because it comprises, generally in panels, we either have geopolitics people, we have diplomats, we have government policymakers, we have private policymakers. We rarely see corporate people. In this panel, we have a nice mix of all. The topic being such that these two actors are very important. The governments, associations, they set the regulatory field. Companies, they have to deliver the service, and consumers use that service. The regulatory boundaries are defined by the government, the regulatory actions by companies. Now, in telecommunications from 2019 onwards, although it began a little earlier, but 2019, this action of a rogue state intruding into the telecom sector with a ruthlessness never seen before has come to light. As a result, governments or sovereigns across the world have had to reshape and rethink the way they design telecom policies, which is a big challenge for democracies because under the rule of law, it's not enough to say that such and such company from such and such country is not allowed anymore simply because we sense or we feel or some of the actions of its actors has been adversarial to our citizens. You need a proper evidence-based, you need regulation law, etc. On the other hand, companies, as soon as the regulatory structures begin to change, have to readjust their budgets, their returns to shareholders, the profitability, even the technologies sometimes, when the entire platforms are changed, how does one talk to the other? And the disruption that is being caused by China has suddenly brought sovereigns as well as companies across the world to get more nimble-footed. You need faster policies, you need quicker response time, you need to be able to protect your citizens on the one side, and on the other, the companies, they have to take and function within changed regulatory landscapes with the speed of light. And so this panel, I'm going to ask, I hope we will give you a nice diversified view about this. I'm going to begin with Agnieszka. We were talking outside earlier, and you mentioned how, despite knowing that there are problems, getting a regulation or a law in place makes it very difficult. And therefore, by the time things happen, a lot of water flows under the bridge. Would you like to talk about that? How do you enact a law that protects your citizens?
I hope it's working. Yes. First of all, thank you so much for the possibility to be in the panel and to speak also to make closer a little bit how the European Union is thinking about the legislation and how we are approaching our partners from outside of the EU. And yes, as you mentioned, the legislation is a key element in our approach. Because according to how we operate, how we proceed, the legislation provides the objectivity and helps to to work on the criteria that later on can be applied in a practice, but also can be executed and can be checked, should it be the case, also in front of the responsible authorities. So this is the whole process, how the legislation comes into place and how you later on apply it to particular technologies to make those approach neutral and objective, not to decide on a basis of you like or you don't like one or the other partner, but take a very objective approach. And you asked me about how this legislation translates into protection of our system, of our critical infrastructure. In the European Union, currently we are, one legislation is already on the way, but the other one is being discussed. And in the context of cybersecurity, the most important is, and I'm going to use the name and abbreviation because I think it is important for you to also spend some time, maybe if you have that, to analyze it. is an NIS directive, and the second legislation is Cybersecurity Resilience Act. Both of them talk and underline the importance of the security of the one who are receiving the services from the private sector. So we have all three segments of the whole supply chain, the producer, the manufacturers, the legislator, and the citizens who are later on receiving it. So the whole idea of this legislation is to provide the security of the products, so that at the end the citizens can be sure that whatever they use, it is secure, it is safe, and they understand the rules, how this new technology is going to affect their life. So I think this very legislative, sometimes called not flexible approach, European not flexible approach, provides us this comfort that we do have this transparency and legal measures to check how the particular technology is used, and how we can be sure that it's used in our favor and not against us. Thank you.
And a follow-up on that. So how do you distinguish between a kind of technology and another? Because all the technologies, be they from China, from US, from Sweden, Finland, anywhere, who are largely the equipment makers for 5G, how do you distinguish which technology is intrusive and which is not? Because my sense is that all technologies are universal. So what is it that would help you enact a law in favor of or against a particular entity?
So our primary goal is resilience. So whatever legislation we are working on and we will be working on in the future should support and should enhance the level of resilience of the, in the case which I'm talking about 27 EU member states. So we'll be trying to set up the rules which will objectively allow the access to the market for any partner. But should this partner...
allow me to interrupt.
Yes.
You're not answering the question. Therefore, I've had to ask you this question in a different way. What constitutes evidence?
What constitutes?
Evidence. How do you decide on the basis of law that such and such, what are the components that would help you enact such a law?
No, but this is exactly what I started saying. The resilience means very concrete measures that you're applying to be sure that the technology is safe and secure. And in the particular case we are talking about cybersecurity, we have something what is called risk assessment. So each of the technology can be run through the risk assessment and can be assessed if it is safe enough to be introduced to, in this case, European market. But of course, the other countries can decide themselves. But should they be interested in doing business in Europe, then we will be asking them, please concern and follow our rules that we establish within our network. And this is not also without the reason that we are so much attached to them. We spend years trying to construct them, and we collected a lot of lessons learned. So we are also ready and very happy to share them with other partners so that it is easier.
Thank you. Tiit, I come to you as a follow-up to this discussion. Your country is among the technological leaders in the continent today. A lot of startups, everything is there. And you've been one of the pioneers in this area. How would you, what are the threats that you see from Chinese technologies in 5G? What are these threats? What are these threats that, for instance, will not be there in the US equipment?
Yes, at first, thank you for inviting me, and it's a pleasure to be here. It's for the first time for me in this sort of part of the world, and I'm really surprised that it's the last panel of the Free Tech conference, and hall is full. So I understand that the legend that here the hardworking and honest people are living is true. So it's thank you again. So what concerns cyber issues, cybersecurity issues? So I I told the honorable moderator before this that I'm not a cybersecurity expert. My profession is to be a diplomat and represent.
So you needn't talk about the technology. Yeah. You can talk about the geopolitics. So is equipment from one country and the same equipment from another country, how do you distinguish their features?
So what I wanted to continue that what makes, of course, Estonian cybersecurity experts, everybody of us a little bit, is that we were the first ones to be sort of the target of the real first well-known cyber attack in 2007. And this has given us time to sort of learn and understand a little bit and see a little bit behind the curve, we think, than maybe most of the countries. And what we have done in this context is, and we understood that absolutely essential is the cooperation. And in every possible level. So what we have done this far, what we see as a success of our diplomacy is that being the member of United Nations Security Council, non-permanent member, which we finished 31st of December last year, we promised we're having to campaign that we will bring cybersecurity issues into UN Security Council, and we managed to do it. So in the 29th of June in 2021, for the first time officially in UN Security Council, the cyber security and cyber threats are discussed. So this lays very important foundation, I think, because it is not that easy to attribute technically at our current knowledge, what is a threat to rule-based democratic world order and what is not. But we have to start the discussion from somewhere, and this is, for example, one of the cornerstones we can now step on.
So let me rephrase the question. Are you comfortable with the data of your country going to US companies rather than to a Chinese company?
Yes, I think at current moment we are comfortable with this because, the other concept that Estonia has been advertising during couple of past years is called trusted connectivity. And in this context, with the connectivity, we mean the full spectrum of connections, starting with our grids, our energy grids, our transport connections, but also our telecommunication connections, and of course all the data layer that runs these infrastructure objects in the 21st century and coming decades. And it is really important, we think, that the most important battles of the 21st century are actually carried about this infrastructure, how it is run, on what principles, and who actually, creates this. And of course, it should be a common effort of rule-based democracies that this infrastructure is creating according to the rules and our, vision and way of life.
Because, so democracies would mean the institutions of democracy to which you can appeal in case of a breach. Would that articulate your mind?
Yes, that's it. And to put it simply, we have to use and promote technology what it has what it is promising to do. And we have a lot of examples what the technology does the things it is not supposed to do. And this is the trust part of it in the connectivity. And we think it is going to be one of the instrumental sort of questions and battlefields, how the century rolls out.
Thank you. Sanjay, I'll come to you before I'll come to you last, Rahul. Sanjay, how is India protecting its citizens on this front of cyber technologies, in communication areas, in 5G, which is now going to be launched very soon at scale? Should we be worried? Are we vulnerable?
So, first of all, thank you for having me on this panel. Your question, are we vulnerable? Well, I think everyone has risks, so everyone is vulnerable. Let me first put that clear. So, assuming that we are not vulnerable, that's the wrong assumption. How are we protecting? Of course, you have multiple layers, right from regulatory aspects to technical controls and to the processes that you deploy. And obviously the last but not the least is the awareness and amongst citizens and capacity building. So until and unless you have all these things in place, you will have challenges. Even if one of them is weak, that will become the weakest link. So having said that, there are multiple things in place for protection because this field is so vast. And if you're seeing, I mean, you have to plug multiple leaky holes, whereas the adversary just has to get into any one of them. Having said that, it is challenging. And just by having capacity and only by people, you will not be able to do all these things. You obviously have to have a lot of technology which can be helping you from an automation perspective, which will help you to control things, monitor things, give you advanced warnings. You have to have cooperation, partnerships, look at what sort of threat intelligence you can gather, and then accordingly communicate that well in time for the people to take care, organizations to take care of themselves, and accordingly safeguard even after that something will happen. And as you rightly mentioned, you need to look at the resilience aspect. And in resilience, obviously, 4 specific factors that you need to look at is anticipate, withstand, recover and evolve. So are you in a position to anticipate what is going to be the threat, what is going to happen? It's just like you had 9/11. Did you anticipate it? Did you think that you will have an aircraft getting into a building? No. So these are new areas where these are going to come. You don't even know what's going to come. So, but whatever you can anticipate, let's start anticipating that. Having anticipated that, how do you withstand it? What sort of things do you need to put in place? And once you put in place, you still have a crisis. How do you recover from it? And then what do you learn from it and how do you evolve? So that's the only process that will work.
During which time a whole landscape may have changed. For instance, a particular country today is seen with suspicion. Tomorrow it could be another. Do you think perhaps that indigenous technologies are the way forward? And if so, is it even feasible?
I think if I take a step back, if you're saying China and if you're saying 5G, now they've got a particular model which they are propagating, and there are people who are taking that and they're happy with that. That's their choice. And as mentioned, they've done their risk assessment and they feel that's acceptable risk to them. And you got the other model, which is the ORAN and VRAN model, etc. And here you got multiple players who can fill in the stack. And this is where the opportunity is for a larger community and society and people to innovate, come up with technologies which can be plugged in, and you have a plug and play opportunity, and then you are not relying on one particular vendor for everything. Now here you got multiple things, and then you can play around and look at much more innovation, which can be smaller clusters, new startups, and these things are already happening. It's not that when you say, is it feasible? It's already happening. So there are people who are creating new technologies, they are disrupting existing models, and these technologies can be used.
So effectively, it is coming down to the a small word called trust, which is a fleeting word. Rahul, I'll come to you now. You have heard the 3 lawmakers or policy people or those who influence major decisions, but you are the buyer, you take orders, you offer services, you engage platforms, those platforms get scaled up, you test them, a whole lot of money goes into, you are answerable to shareholders equally as much as to consumers. At some point, such a change in the regulatory structures puts a burden on the kind of equipment that you or other telecom services providers across the world can purchase. How do you react to it? I'm sure you would be shipping, a policy may change when you have shipped half the equipment. How do you work around that?
Yeah, thank you, Gautam, for this question. You are absolutely right. You know, as businesses, we all aspire for consistency. We require for predictability in how we are going to really operate. And whenever there is disruption in terms of policy or a new policy comes in, we have to try and adjust, how we are going to modulate. Thankfully, as a country, I think we have been in a sort of a evolution of technologies over the last few years. And sometimes I always wonder whether not being a pioneer and leading a technology helps us out always, right? So as it is, we are generally, we take our time and we reach there. So I think that evolution of technologies and the intermix of those technologies allows us to be more modular in our approach, right? So we are more nimble in terms of our deployments. The commitments, because of the nature of the business and being the low ARPU market like our country, our investments are also very tired, right? In the sense that I will invest, but for what is my horizon, right? So that is one approach. The second thing which helps us is India is like mini Europe, right? We have got 22 licensed service areas. So every time I am approaching a market, my strategy, my plan can be different for all my markets, right? So that allows me much more flexible approach to change. So for example, if I take a equipment, let's say for a border state, tomorrow I feel that there are sensitivities involved, I can choose to deploy that equipment in some other state where the sensitivities might be a little different. So the point I'm trying to make is that it gives us more flexible approach, and modular approach of the evolution helps us out to plan ourselves better. Does it work out all the time? No, it does not work out all the time. Sometimes it is much more larger in terms of components. Suppose I have taken a technology route, I've chosen a type of equipment, and in that case, I think we have to have a path of migration over a period of time. There are bets which we have taken. We discussed that with the policy makers, and thankfully we have policy makers who understand the problems which we are in, and they are able to guide us, that this is perhaps the road which we can take to be able to reach a point. So honestly, I think we are in a comfortable situation. We have tried in our country is very susceptible. As a telco today, Mr. Bahl is there. We are target of not only ransomware, we are target of opportunistic hackers. We are also targets of state level entities, right? That's the very nature of business we are in. So that is a challenge we are in. But I think the layered approach which Mr. Bahl talked about of how we are designing our networks and securities, the redundancies which we are able to create for future, I think those approaches are helping us out. That's where I think we are.
But in terms of the quality of equipment, that coming from China, let's leave the price aside for a while. It is cheaper. There are no two ways about it, or at least it is cheaper at the time of capital investment, but maybe not so over a period of time. That's what we've studied. So the costs somehow even out over a medium term. But let us say they are cheaper. I'm asking in terms of pure technology and the ability of that equipment to capture data and send it back to the countries. Are the two technologies different, made in China and made in non-China?
You see, it's a little difficult question to answer, honestly, because we are at a cusp of a technology point where we are diving into 5G now. Of course, China has done a 5G rollout over the last 2-3 years, and a very vigorous rollout. Typically, they were able to roll out more than 1 million sites, over a period of 2 to 3 years. That's the total amount of sites we have rolled out in 25 years. Right, so the challenges are very, very different. The scale is very different. But as I said, I think where Chinese equipment might have been better, maybe would have been things like the weight of the equipment, for example, is very different compared to what you're getting in the market right now. And even the energy consumption patterns may be a little different. Otherwise, in terms of really getting what gets to the customer, I don't think we are challenged a lot.
No, I'm talking about pure intrusion, the ability to collate and transmit data where it ought not to go?
No, so I think our approach for network deployment, for cybersecurity deployment is what Mr. Bahl outlined. We are ready for everybody. Nobody is a friend, nobody is a foe. We have to design our networks irrespective of whether a hacker will be from China or from any other country. Right? So we are just have to prepare. Otherwise, we can't focus on one country and prepare ourselves. We just prepare ourselves, create layers, do encryption of our data. That's what we do. And that's what we should do.
So Agnieszka, I'll come back to you now. We've heard Rahul, where it doesn't really matter. They have to prepare for all kinds of equipment. Now, how will you enact a law which excludes a particular company or a country, given that the underlying, as Rahul says, is similar?
Yeah, you're very focused on excluding. I would be more focused on including and making the clear rules for those who would like to join the market. And of course, depending on the market, the rules will be different. So that's why I am so much sticked on, and I will keep it, that the main criteria is resilience and are very objective measures that we can easily technically check and then classify the supplier. Is it high-risk supplier or is it not a high-risk supplier? So I would definitely not go in the direction of exclusion, but more, are you ready to apply the rules that are for the certain market requested? That's it.
Tiit, the Chinese vendors, they say that here we are willing to share our codes. Here is all the data, here is all the codes, and you can test us to see whether we are doing anything right or wrong, etc., etc. And despite that, and unfortunately, we don't have China in the room because they are in their zero COVID policy. We couldn't have any Chinese people fly in here, even though we invited them. And that's a big hole on this panel. I would have preferred to have a Chinese person here as well. But now that they are willing, they said we are willing to share our codes. Now what? The codes, many other vendors are not willing to do that. And despite that, China is being isolated aside. How do you react to that?
You're going into very technical.
No, I was asking Tiit. Sorry. So I left that.
No problem. You know, I think we in this very sophisticated and developing domain, it is not that easy to so go very technical to sort of regulating the issues, and I'm certainly not competent of doing this. But if we take a more general view, and I think it was touched earlier today also here, is that that we're talking about cyber domain now already in a military context, you know, and the most important things always go to the military context. So you used to have the sea, the earth, the space, but now in the most of the advanced armies we have a cyber command also in Estonia. And the interesting thing when you start to think about it is that it's not my fault, but I share this thinking in these three other domains. If something happens, you have a conflict, so the conflict ends, the domain will be there. The land will be there most likely, the sea, the space. But in the cyber conflict, in the cyber domain, it changes. This changes constantly. And, how it is created, what are the rules that and regulations that created, what is technically inside there. We are in a verge of a quantum leap, so nobody actually knows exactly who is doing what, and basically on real life, in real time. And so I think it is in this context important to sort of frame like a broader sort of regulation or frame. And in a very basic way, it is either we accept this country as a rule-based democracy or not. And this is very easy ground to make the decisions, not going into the technical details. And why it is important, we will see it on a daily basis. What is the war that is going on in Ukraine? It is not, of course, you mentioned here China. China is not involved in this war. but the clearly authoritarian regime of Russia is, and there are countries who can clearly have, took a stand, and the ones who haven't. And I think it is really important that it is a very clear-cut case if you look at it a little bit closer. So I think it is important that everybody has a stance there, and I think how it ends there is going to shape the future of the planet Earth pretty much.
Yeah, because sometimes I feel that it is the geopolitics that is creating these wedges, but China is not helping itself either, because in 2017 they came out with a law, it's called the National Intelligence Law, under which 4 articles, Articles 7, 9, 12 and 14, virtually converted every entity, every citizen, every organization into a spy. Although the articles mention that you will be encouraged or there will be motivations, but as you keep saying, when there is no rule of law, then these become mandatory. So you are forced to become a spy the moment the state, a non-state actor is forced to become a spy when the state decides it. And perhaps that may go into some of your evaluations.
I can agree with that.
You're a good diplomat. Sanjay, when you evaluate vendors and you say that a particular vendor is okay and another is not okay, are there objective criteria or are there some subjectivity also embedded into it?
See, primarily it has to be objective criteria. Okay. Like you've seen, India has this trusted sources for the telecom equipment, and it's put up on the website, so it's transparently available to all who are the trusted vendors, what are the trusted sources, which are the trusted equipments, etc., which can be utilized. So we've not said keep this out or keep that out. We looked at it. There are testing centers which have been set up. So you test it and you say, yes, this is okay, this is not okay, this is what cleared, the criteria is given. It has to pass through those criteria. The moment you put in subjectivity is like what you said, then there is going to be a lot of opaqueness and there will be a lot of issues and challenges. And your previous thing which you said, when you as I said, if you have multiple vendors who are giving you components and you're building your stack with that, you have more opportunities to look at more innovation and you have more opportunities to see that it is not going to fall through. And it's not because of the geopolitics, etc., which is around, and as you said, things will still be in your control and you will be able to take care of things. So I think we have to be very clear from those aspects, and that is why I think the Department of Telecom, etc., they've put out clear criteria as to what they will be testing, how they will be testing, etc.
Rahul, I'll come to you. Is this feasible? Is this practical? Breaking the equipment partly from X, partly from Y, a third from Z, etc. Is this practical at a service provider level?
Yeah, it's absolutely practical. It's also modular. Also gives us a lot of choices to design our plan, our networks.
Do the platforms talk to each other? Because earlier they didn't.
Yeah, most of them follow standards. So we follow the 3GPP standards, for example, for rollouts. So till the time the standards are common and there's a lot of handshake happening on that, I think that's not a problem. In fact, it is better to have multiple vendors with you. Because after the pandemic, supply chain is one big issue. So you don't want to be hinged on to a particular vendor or OEM to plan your networks. That is one. Secondly, also you are able to taste a lot of innovations in technology happening on platforms. Right, so somebody may be good on something, somebody maybe else may be doing better on something. So you're able to do that better. Also, briefly, Sanjay had mentioned about the open RAN, which we are getting into in terms of 5G. So you are actually going to have disaggregated networks going in future. Gives you a lot of chance to look at having a completely different RAN where multiple vendors will be able to serve. So actually, it's a preferred choice to be in a situation where you have disaggregated multiple vendors.
Thank you. We have about 10 minutes for questions. If anybody would like to ask, please identify yourself and ask your question.
Sorry, asking a lot of questions. Thank you. My name is Surendra Singh, and I'm a carbon auditor. But here's a question I have for Tiit and Agnieszka, both of you. Just wanted to ask, yesterday we had a fantastic conversation with Mr. Patel and Tom Bird from Microsoft, VP Cybersecurity. And he did share that for India it would be a better idea if, in case of a next cyber attack, we build and we take our data on a cloud platform so that in case the localization fails, we still have the access to data and we can keep on working with the infrastructure and everything. My request or a question would be, what are the chapters that you think, or rather suggestions or the measures that you can suggest India in the kind of geopolitical setting that we have and the kind of vulnerabilities or the weaknesses as Mr. Bahl has already shared here with? Thank you.
Yeah, would you like to take that, Agnieszka?
I just want to be sure that I understood you correctly. So what can be done to strengthen the EU-India response in a case of, or have I not understood you correctly? Okay, thank you so much. First of all, there are forums where India cooperates, and I am going to focus, of course, on the European Union because those are the countries we represent. So we have the forums on which we discuss. Not far away in the past, there was also India-EU Cyber Dialogue. We have the roundtables where we discuss the cybersecurity issues and the way forward, starting from very technical elements like cooperation of CERTs, through the crisis management, through the application of the norms of responsible state behavior. So all the elements that play the role and that place us at the international level as well as on a bilateral level are taken into account. But practically speaking, should the case happen, of course, the first reaction would be coming from the technical layer. So I am sure you're aware about the first organization and the cooperation between the CERTs within this framework. In the EU, we have strengthened cooperation between all the CERTs of the 27 member states. And in the future, there can be also a discussion how to enhance this cooperation also with the external partners, so that in a case of a large-scale incident that is not only cross-border within the EU but goes much farther, how can we support each other in the reaction and response? But to underline, I would like to also make a comment that we now are on the level where we are discussing within EU how this crisis management structure and the response should look like between 27. And once we establish all those instruments needed, then it would be also much easier to be one point of contact for you as an external partner. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other question? Yeah, please. Any other questions? People who want to ask some questions? Just maybe you could just be there so that we can get there faster. Yes, sir.
My name is Anup Kumar Das and I'm from JNU. My question is related to consumer perspective. So you are talking about the operator's perspective. So what kind of benchmark or safeguard consumer can take in case of 5G and similar services?
Sanjay, that's to you, I think. Tough question.
Hi.
One second, we'll just take this.
So that's a very broad brush that you just painted. Okay, so I don't think that's the right way to look at things. You're assuming you are already knowing what are going to be the threats. So the consumers should be educated about it. Yes, the consumers need to be educated on whatever is the known threats today, whatever you know. So that's what is there in your dictionary today. But there are a lot of stuff which will not be in your dictionary. So what do you do about that? So it's a continuous process. So the consumer has to also understand that it's not that they attend a 1 hour, half an hour online session or a conference of this sort and they are aware of it, or they read a couple of pages, do's and don'ts, and they are ready to go. They'll have to continuously learn themselves if they want to live in this knowledge society. Otherwise they will have challenges. So having said that, if you look at things today, how much are you aware that your device is not infected by a bot or a malware, any of your digital device, whether it's your mobile or whether it's a laptop or your desktop. So we've already put in place things like, if you are aware of the Cyber Swachhta Kendra, it tells you on a regular basis that yes, your device is infected, go to so-and-so portal, download free tools, clean up your system and go forward. But how many of you are doing it? How many of you are looking at, no, I agree that some of you are definitely much more aware, let me put it that way, and much more knowledgeable, but general consumers, they just want everything on a plate. That I should get, if I have taken a device, it should be hardened. That's not the world today. So even if you're looking at your IoT devices, if you have a smart watch, you are connected to the net, are you secure? Ask yourself that question. So is there a mechanism for saying, like you have in air conditioning here, 1 star, 2 star, 3 star, tells you for energy efficiency. Can you have a mechanism of that sort for IoT or for any of these items, saying that it is 1 star, but you still want to buy it, it's you are deciding the risk. So it's just like what you're taking insurance for. You decide, I just want for so and so amount, that's the risk I'm willing to take. The rest is okay.
Thank you, sir. We'll just take a next question. Yes, sir, please.
Hi, so I'm Neil. I run a management consultancy, legal and political risk. My question is again to Sanjay. I mean, the CERT-In has some regulation that you have to report cyber attacks within 6 hours, otherwise you get some sort of thing. Now, is that something that's going to be addressed in the Digital India bill or some data privacy bill somewhere? Because, there is a public interest litigation building up on that 6-hour timeline because it's just not working out for the tech sector and it's just handed over to lawyers and policy, in-house policy to handle.
Thank you, but I would rather that we leave this question because if it's already being considered, I think we still need to wait for the outcome. Yes, sir.
Yeah. My name is Harjit and my question is, if localization of data fails, it will still be accessible via cloud, but in case of war. But I have 3 concerns. First, if the state where the company operating coerces to deny the access to that nation, how we will deal with it? Second, the private firm's interest lies in profit, then how we could be sure that data is safe and will not be sold to the belligerent party? And the third is, will not it be an active participation in war efforts by the company by undermining the war efforts of the one state for the same treatment as, for example, as Russia could strike down the Starlink in this, if my proportion is true. And
your question is basically how to protect the data of consumers from intrusion. Is that correct? If I can rephrase it. Yeah. Would you like to take that?
Yeah, I think, first of all, we are already covered under several laws as far as this is concerned. There is the IT Act, there is my license, and more important for an operator perspective is that the consumer data is paramount. So privacy of the data is the largest issue as far as we are concerned. How do we plan it? First of all, you have to decide what is the critical data, what is not so critical data, what is the level of encryption you're going to do to, how are you going to harden your network, your equipment. So there is a full plan which is evolved out in each set of data. There are parameters which are made, there are zones which are created, for access, who can do, who can't do. So there are several things which we are doing. And it's always in an envelope which has been created by the organization policies, some by our mandate, and there are several audits which are happening at series of intervals. So absolutely, in this world, everything is vulnerable, but are we taking the best steps to protect it? I think yes, we are.
Thank you. And I'll have to pause here because we don't have time. I'm so sorry. Otherwise, Trisha out there will, she's my boss. She will start hounding me. Quick 1-sentence closing remarks, beginning with you, Rahul.
Hello, I have a question here. Very small question. Just one line question. Like my question is for Mr.
So you can do it over dinner. I don't want to get in the way of your dinner. Yeah, 1 minute closing remark. I mean, not actually 10 seconds.
Yeah. No, I think this is very interesting. We are into the cusp of 5G rollout, and so talking about security and cyber is very important. We are in an evolving geopolitical situation also. So I think we have to tie up our shoes and be ready to face whatever it comes. But I think we are protected and we have to create mechanisms so that we can do that further.
Thank you. Tiit.
Yes, I think we should preach for cooperation, because if we want to be, trustfully connected, and it's a must in the connected world, then the only solution is to work together, especially in the cyber field, because it's a little bit works, vice versa. We have to cooperate at first amongst the partners, the like-minded, and if we reach a consensus there, then we can start to discuss the other authoritarian side. In the conventional realm, it's
Thank you.
different.
Thank you. Agnieszka.
Okay, very fast. I would be going into more technical directions. So for me, shared situational awareness and cooperation in that field between technical and operational level would be a way forward to enhance our cybersecurity at the end of all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. Sanjay.
Completely agree. Shared situational awareness, partnerships is crucial. If you want a resilient digital India, we can't have things like what you just mentioned. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a remarkable harmony among panelists, the first time that I'm experiencing it. Thank you very much. Over to you, Shobh.
Sorry. Is it working now? Okay. Thank you so much, Gautam. Excellent panel as always. Please, a round of applause for the speakers.